Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us.
Always a pleasure to be back.
This time we're taking a look at chapter 13 of Fluke,
Ooh, yeah.
which had some really interesting points, I thought. I mean, it really kind of challenges how we think about control in our lives and, maybe embraces a bit more randomness.
Yeah, it's fascinating how deeply ingrained that need for control is in us as humans, right?
Right.
We want to believe we're the masters of our own destiny, but the book really pushes back on that and says, things are a lot more chaotic
Yeah.
and interconnected and unpredictable than we like to think.
It's like we're walking around with these blinders on,
Right.
thinking we're, the ones making all the decisions, but then Fluke comes along and is like, hey, but what about all those times where luck played a role?
Exactly.
Or where things totally went sideways even though you thought you had it all planned out?
It definitely makes you stop and think.
It does.
One of the things that really stood out to me was the book's analysis of The Secret. Do you remember that whole phenomenon?
I do.
Like, think positive and you'll manifest all this wealth and happiness?
Oh, yeah, totally. I even tried it for a while, hoping all my problems would just magically disappear.
Didn't quite pan out that way, huh?
Not quite, no.
The book delves into why that is and points out that The Secret kind of promotes this idea that we have this power over external events through sheer willpower. But research on things like the hedonic treadmill suggests that we actually adapt to our circumstances really quickly. So even when we get those things we think will make us happy, that feeling tends to fade pretty fast.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah, so it's like, even if we could manifest all those good things in life, we'd probably just end up wanting more anyway.
Yeah.
Never really truly satisfied.
So it's kind of like a never-ending cycle.
It is. It's a powerful illusion to think that we could just, bend the universe to our will. And honestly, it can be really liberating to just let go of that.
Yeah.
And acknowledge the role of chance and that interconnectedness of everything.
Okay, I see what you're saying, but if we're not really in control, then does that mean that, our actions don't matter? Like it all feels a bit pointless if we're just at the whim of fate?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting.
Okay.
The book isn't saying we have no control.
Okay.
But it is challenging us to think about what control really means. Instead of trying to micromanage every single detail of our lives, maybe we need to focus on understanding these complex systems that we're part of.
Yeah.
And learn to influence them in a smarter, more nuanced way.
Like working with the system instead of against it.
Exactly.
That makes me think of that example in the book about Mao Zedong's Four Pests campaign.
Oh, yeah.
Where they tried to eliminate sparrows and it led to this huge ecological disaster.
A perfect example of how that obsession with control can really backfire.
Right.
I mean, his goal was to increase agricultural production. But by trying to wipe out one element of this whole intricate ecosystem. They set off this cascade of unintended consequences.
Whoa.
And it ultimately led to widespread famine.
That's crazy.
It really highlights that interconnectedness of everything.
So it's like trying to play whack-a-mole with nature.
You got it.
You solve one problem and 10 more pop up in its place.
And that actually ties into this concept of the edge of chaos.
Oh, right.
When systems are too tightly controlled, they become incredibly fragile, and then even a small disruption can bring the whole thing crashing down.
So are you saying instead of always striving for like perfect efficiency and predictability, we should be aiming for more like resilience and adaptability?
You got to think of it like a rigid structure versus something more flexible.
Okay.
Right? A rigid structure might seem strong, but it can't bend with the wind.
Right.
But a more flexible system can weather those storms.
That makes a lot of sense.
So it's about finding that balance.
Okay, so if trying to control everything is a recipe for disaster,
Right.
What's the alternative?
Right.
Are we just supposed to give up and let chaos reign?
Not quite. The book actually suggests that there's a certain beauty in uncertainty. It's about finding that sweet spot between order and disorder and recognizing that those unexpected twists and turns can lead us to amazing places we never would have found on our own.
I like that idea, but I have to admit there's still a part of me that clings to that illusion of control.
Yeah.
It feels kind of scary to just let go and embrace the unknown.
It is a mind shift for sure. But think about it this way. Would you really want to know everything that was going to happen in your life? Every triumph, every heartbreak, every surprise?
I guess not.
Wouldn't life lose a little bit of its magic if it were completely predictable?
Yeah, I guess a life without any surprises would be kind of dull.
Exactly. It's like watching a movie where you already know the ending, right?
Right.
It's those unexpected moments, those plot twists that keep us on the edge of our seats.
Okay. I'm starting to warm up to this idea.
Good.
But I'm still wondering, how do we know when to stick with what we know and when to venture into the unknown? Like, how do we find that balance between exploring and exploiting?
Now, that is the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And it's something we're going to delve into much deeper in just a moment.
All right, so we were talking about that explore versus exploit dilemma, like that constant, back and forth between sticking with what we know works and trying something new.
It's a struggle we all face.
I know, I definitely do.
The book uses some really good examples to illustrate this.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, like deciding whether to try a new restaurant or just go back to your old favorite.
Oh, totally. I'm so guilty of that.
You kind of crave that familiarity and comfort, but then you might miss out on discovering something even better.
Oh, that's true.
So how do we know when to take that leap?
Right. It's a tough one.
There's no easy answer. But the book really stresses the importance of understanding the difference between what it calls rubber problems and rice problems.
Okay, remind me, what's the distinction again?
So rubber problems are those kind of predictable situations where you can find the optimal solution and just stick with it. It's like a math equation.
Right.
There's one right answer. Once you find it, you're good to go.
Right. Okay. And rice problems are?
Rice problems are more like those messy, complex situations where there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Okay.
Things are constantly changing. There's so many variables at play.
So it's more like trying to hit a moving target.
Exactly. And that's where exploration becomes so important.
Interesting.
Trying different approaches, experimenting, even embracing a little randomness can lead to more resilient outcomes in the long run.
That reminds me of that example in the book about the Bantu people of Borneo.
Oh,
and their unique way of planting rice.
Fascinating example.
They didn't just rely on past experience or data. They actually used randomness in their decision-making.
By observing those sacred birds.
Yes. Like the flight patterns and the calls of these birds.
And it might seem superstitious to outsiders, but it was actually a really effective way of dealing with the unpredictability of their environment.
It's like they were acknowledging that they couldn't control everything.
Right.
So instead of fighting against the randomness, they worked with it.
And it turns out their approach was actually more successful than other communities who tried to rigidly control their planting locations based on, previous year's yields and stuff.
Wow. So sometimes the best strategy is to actually loosen our grip a little bit.
Yeah. Let go of that need to micromanage and allow for some improvisation along the way.
I like that. And it's not just about external circumstances, right?
Right.
It's also about recognizing that sometimes our own assumptions and ways of thinking can be the biggest obstacle.
Absolutely.
The book talks about this idea of negative capability, right?
Yes.
Being comfortable with not knowing all the answers.
It's a crucial skill in a world that's constantly bombarding us with information.
It's like we're so used to having all the answers at our fingertips,
right,
that we've forgotten how to just sit with uncertainty.
And let our minds wander a bit.
It makes me think of that study where people would rather give themselves electric shocks.
Oh, yeah.
Than just sit alone with their thoughts.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It is, like we're so afraid of boredom.
We've lost touch with that creative potential of those quiet moments.
But history is full of examples of how breakthroughs have come from those seemingly unproductive times.
It is. It's like our brains need those fallow periods to make those unexpected connections.
So we need to reclaim the value of daydreaming.
Exactly.
Letting our minds wander without a specific goal.
It's about cultivating that childlike curiosity and sense of wonder.
Okay, but how do we actually do that in our busy lives?
Right. Good question.
Like, how do we create space for those moments of negative capability?
Well, it starts with awareness. Just recognizing how much we value control and how that can limit our thinking. And then it's about making conscious choices.
Like what?
Like scheduling time for reflection, engaging in activities that spark your curiosity, and resisting the urge to constantly fill every moment with productive tasks.
So giving ourselves permission to play a little bit.
Exactly.
Be more spontaneous.
And it's not just about personal fulfillment.
Right.
This shift in mindset can also impact how we approach work relationships, even global challenges.
So if we're moving away from this obsession with control and embracing more randomness and interconnectedness, how does that change the way we think about our individual actions?
Yeah.
Like, if so much is left to chance, does it even matter what we do?
Wow. So we've been talking about some really big ideas.
We have.
This whole illusion of control, and the benefits of randomness.
Right.
And how our actions have these ripple effects we don't even see.
It's a lot to take in.
It's one thing to talk about it, but how do we actually live it?
That's the real challenge, right? Putting these ideas into practice.
Especially in a world that's all about, productivity and optimization.
Like we're constantly being told to maximize everything.
Yeah, have it all figured out. So how do we cultivate that negative capability?
Right. And being okay with not knowing.
It's definitely countercultural.
It is. So where do we even begin?
Well, I think it starts with small steps.
Oh, okay.
Instead of planning out every detail of your weekend, maybe leave some room for spontaneity. See where the day takes you.
Even if it means like going off script a bit.
Exactly.
I like that, giving ourselves permission to wander.
And maybe resist that urge to Google every question that pops into your head.
Oh, yeah. Totally guilty of that.
Just sit with the uncertainty for a bit. Let your mind mull it over.
That can be hard.
It can, but you might be surprised by the insights that come up.
It's like we've forgotten how to think for ourselves.
We're so used to having all the information at our fingertips.
Yeah, we just expect instant answers.
Yeah. But the book reminds us that those moments of quiet contemplation, that's where real creativity comes from.
It's like our brains need time to just process things.
Yeah, to make those unexpected connections.
I know. I've definitely had times where I was forcing myself to work through a problem, and then the solution came to me when I finally stepped away.
It's like our minds need those breaks, those fallow periods.
So we're talking about reclaiming those moments of unstructured time.
Yes.
But how does this connect back to that sense of agency we were talking about before?
It's a good question.
If we're embracing uncertainty,
Right.
does that mean our actions have less impact?
I don't think so at all.
Okay.
Remember, it's not about giving up control entirely. It's about understanding where our influence lies.
Yeah.
We may not be able to predict or control every outcome,
Yeah.
but our choices still matter. It's about focusing our energy on the things we can influence.
And trusting that those actions have ripple effects.
Exactly like that image of the monarch butterfly migration.
Oh, yeah.
Each butterfly plays a tiny role.
Right.
But it's essential to that whole incredible journey.
So we're all interconnected in a way.
We are all contributing to this larger story that's unfolding.
And that can be a source of hope, right?
Absolutely.
Not just anxiety.
It's about recognizing that we're part of something bigger than ourselves.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Fluke,
Yeah.
I think the key takeaway is that we need to shift away from that mindset of control.
Let go of that need to micromanage.
And embrace the uncertainty and interconnectedness of everything.
It might feel counterintuitive, but that's where we can really tap into our full potential.
Both individually and collectively.
So we encourage you to think about how you can cultivate more exploration, more randomness in your own life.
What are those small steps you can take?
What are the potential benefits?
And we'd love to hear your thoughts and reactions to this deep dive.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep